there's a strong sentiment that there's a lot of xenophobia in South Africa. So what was your experience being in Joburg there?
Zero.
Zero.
Of course.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tepo Mavimbela, and now on every Tuesday I've decided that I'm going to do Tough Talk Tuesdays, where I have difficult conversations around almost everything that affects us as Africans, South Africans, and generally people in the world. And right now I am continuing on a continuous conversation that is happening all over social media, all over YouTube, by many other creators, of course. And this is based on immigration and also the fact that South Africans being labeled as xenophobic. Now, what I did before actually making this video, I looked up the amount of foreigners we have in South Africa and by country of origin. And what I found is something from 2020, and it's a top 10. So I'm just going to look at this, and then number one in this list is Zimbabwe, number 2 Mozambique, 3 Lesotho, 4 Malawi, 5 is the United Kingdom, the Democratic Republic of Congo is at number 5, and then Somalia is at number 6, Botswana at 7, Angola at 8, Eswatini is at 9, Ethiopia at 10. Now, this is the top 10 of the countries, the highest being Zimbabwe with 690,243. The second largest population of foreigners in the country are from Mozambique. They are 350,463, and then with Lesotho also in the 7 digits with 192,008, and then all the other countries that I've mentioned are below 100,000. And by the way, because this is something that is collected through the government, through the Home Affairs, this is people that are accounted for. We are talking about legal migrants here in the country. So the conversations that we've been having, mostly when it comes to foreigners, illegal foreigners and legal foreigners in the country, there has been a lot of people calling out what seems to be a lot of foreigners committing crimes in the country. Now, before I do get to that, I want to quickly do some math, and I'm going to round up numbers, okay? So let's just say now in South Africa we have 60 million South African citizens, and in the 60 million South African citizens, we say 1% of those people are criminals. If 1% of 60 million people in South Africa were to be criminals, that means that we would have 600,000 South African criminals. And then if we look at the Zimbabwean population of legal migrants, and let's say 1% of those people become criminals, because that is likely to happen, not to say that they are all, obviously, let's just 1%. Out of 600,000, I'm doing the math on my other phone. Out of 600,000, if 1% of these people were to be criminals, we're looking at 6,000 criminals. So if you hear South Africans complaining about Zimbabwean criminals, they are speaking about part of these 6,000 people, which is a lot, and they are dispersed across multiple places in South Africa, in Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest, you name it, they are there, right? So the numbers obviously will be very high of Zimbabweans being accused or being found for doing crimes, alongside those who are undocumented in the country. Now, when South Africans complain about specifically the ones that are criminals, it doesn't mean that this is xenophobia. Actually, what is happening is that it's people who are in their home and they want to protect their homes, and they are, one, seeking for help from their leaders, which is the government. Number 2, they're also seeking for help from you as a fellow person from the countries of the people that are committing crimes. We will also talk about the immigration laws that are happening in Zimbabwe right now in a different video, because what is happening there is actually very unfair to the Zimbabweans that want to be in South Africa legally. 4,000 rand for a passport is insane for most people, and I mean even for well-off people. 4,000 rand for a passport is insane amount of money. So the other people that are mostly seen, or we will find a lot of criminals from, are people from Mozambique. But the numbers speak for themselves. There's 350,000 rounded off in the country. And if we look at this 1%, again, you can crunch the numbers yourself. And then we have Lesotho people who are accounted for here. Some of them, let's say if 1% are criminals, then we obviously can see that there is a high number that is going to be happening there. So this list, that when I looked at it, although is from 2020, what surprised me a lot is the fact that Nigeria is not in the list of people who are in the country legally and represent the Nigerian country or the Nigerian diaspora in South Africa. That surprised me. The reason it surprises me is because the amount of complaining that happens with regards to Nigerians and crimes here in the country, be it drug dealing, be it fraud, be it scamming, be it human trafficking and sex trafficking. The amount of complaints, the amount of cases that are opened or cases that are reported mostly online, because the South African police services don't actually release information of a person's nationality when they are arrested. The amount of complaints and the amount of people that are talking about Nigerians and their crimes in the country is actually very surprising, given the fact that they are not in the top 10 from 2020. And you may have had a lot of complaints about Nigerian people, certain Nigerian people from 2020 and well before that, right? And many Nigerians have the arrogance of saying that, well, South Africans are just jealous or they are just xenophobic. There's always those are always the go-to excuses. One is jealousy, and the jealousy is mostly they'll tell you that they are jealous of our success. They are jealous that we make more money than them. And although I can see a bit of truth to the jealousy part of things, I think the more of the anger that comes from that is a lot of, especially the flamboyant Nigerians, are in crime. And they do it so proudly. The reason for that is because they know the consequences are very minimum here in this country. And this is why we still have to have a conversation about our government and our police system, okay? They know that the consequences are not so high. And I saw a video, which I will attach in this video, of another Nigerian guy asking a host or the co-host in a podcast that if Nigerians are not such a problem in South Africa, why is it then other African nationalities in South Africa are complaining about Nigerians? And the funny part is that the other guy, I just farted, I'm sorry. The other guy, when he explains it, he said nothing, so I'm just going to pass it. You just watch the video yourself.
If other Africans are complaining bitterly about Nigerians,
okay.
So my question is, how are they complaining about somebody that you are saying are not doing so much or causing so much trouble here in this country? Why are other Africans complaining about us?
Okay, again, I would re-emphasize what I've said before, that when people complain, all right, so you might even have your own complaint about some of the countries you mentioned.
Yeah.
Maybe you see their guys, you'll be like, oh, their guys are like this. You see their ladies, you'll be like, oh, their ladies are like this. You eat their food, you'll be like, oh, their food is like this.
In another video, two Nigerians again in a podcast, the host asked the guest, a lot of African countries outside of South Africa complain about South Africa being xenophobic. You being a Nigerian who has been to South Africa and lived in Joburg for a while, have you experienced xenophobia? Guess what he said? Zero. He experienced zero xenophobia.
There's a strong sentiment that there's a lot of xenophobia in South Africa. So what was your experience being in Joburg then?
Zero.
Zero.
Of course, I think that the media will tend to
but it's not just white media. I think this has been coming from other African nationalities living in South Africa,
yeah,
sharing their experiences, and the news spreads. It goes to the WhatsApp group chats, and all of a sudden there's this basic perception of South Africans as being xenophobic, anti-African. They don't want foreigners there.
Yeah.
So you going there,
I didn't experience one ounce of that. Yeah. In fact, they would I don't look South African, but there was a couple times where someone would come start speaking to me in Venda.
Wow.
Or Zulu or something, just at a restaurant or something. And I was like, okay, cool. But then when they would figure out I'm not South African, they didn't treat me any different.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah. So of course, I empathize with those who have experienced xenophobia, but I personally didn't experience that in South Africa. And like I said, once I got to Joburg, life just started happening.
In fact, here in South Africa, man, I mean, even let's just say right now, 2024, even with the climate, the way things are, a lot of Nigerians, including drug dealers, because we do know these drug dealers, we see them, they are selling openly. They don't actually experience xenophobia in the country. That is why they're so arrogant and comfortable in the country, because South Africans are actually not xenophobic. There's one horrible incident that happened in 2008, which there's no disputing that case or that event or the events during that time were absolutely horrible and tragic, right? And after that, we haven't seen much of that after. And if South Africans were really that xenophobic, it wouldn't just be ending in talks. There would be more of those incidences happening, but they're not happening because genuinely, South Africa is a very forgiving country. I mean, we are still living amongst white people, Afrikaners, and we're not saying all Afrikaners, but Afrikaners that put black South Africans, particularly colors and Indians as well, through apartheid. Right? We have forgiven these people. Some have not. But what we are doing is living in harmony as best as we possibly can here in this country, unless something happens that pushes us away from that. So the accusations that we are xenophobic is really, I think it is trying to put a nozzle on our mouth to silence us from complaining about the problems that we see that are perpetrated, yes, by some of our people, South Africans, and by foreigners. Because if you look at fraud through the government systems such as Home Affairs or Traffic Department, they don't do this alone. They collude with South Africans that are working in these departments. Yes, we can agree on that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are not going to call you out. If we are going to be prosecuting a person like Judy Zuma, then a person like Chidima's mother, for example, has to be prosecuted as well. Okay, so we will not be silenced, one. And two, if you truly believe it's xenophobia when we speak about these things, you have to sit back and think very rationally and remove your emotions from that. Because unfortunately, I keep on saying the very same thing in this video over and over, is that it's everyone else that is being painted in a bad light. I remember in one of the videos, some guy told me, he commented saying that I claim that Nigerians have built a bad reputation for themselves in South Africa. If in 2020 there was less than 30,000 Nigerians in South Africa that are accounted for, and the complaints about Nigerian people, albeit it could be about just 100 of them, were so many, then it's not me who's just making this up. Clearly, there's a reputation that is there that they have created for themselves. But it's not just them, Mangisho. We agree on that. So these are conversations that we have to have. So every single Tuesday, just tune in. Join me in the comment section, and then I'll sometimes expand on topics that we've already spoken about if people feel that I've left out some things. But if we look at the numbers of foreigners that are here in the country, let's look at the legal numbers of people that are here in the country. It would make sense why the larger populations of foreigners that are legally in the country would probably have more criminals, but it also does not make sense for legal foreigners in the country who are in less numbers in the country being the most complained about when it comes to certain types of crimes that really that's sort of new to the country. So yeah, I am done with this video. I'll see you in the next one. Let's have a conversation. Peace. Salute.